Preseason is one thing, regular season is another level, postseason is an entire another level.
Brooklyn, stand up!
Coming for the top, but who gon' say a word to stop us? You know the squad don't fit no competition. Hold up, slept on our greatness long enough. Now we gon' run a score up.
We have a standard of greatness, and I think every day we get a chance to prove that.
It's obviously good to have everybody healthy, but I think we're the Big 15.
Vamos! Kyrie Irving spent the first 6 seasons of his career in Cleveland, where he was an All-Star 4 times, won Rookie of the Year, and also won a chip. He then moved on to Beantown, where he would spend the next 2 seasons. Kyrie was an All-Star in both seasons, but the Celtics never made it to the finals during his time there in Boston. And he's now in his 2nd season with the Nets. This season, Kyrie joined Larry Bird, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant as the only players to average 25 points per game in a 50, 40, 90 season. Let's not forget, y'all, that Kyrie's tenure with the C's didn't exactly end on a high note. Also this, he will play in front of Boston fans for the very first time in the series, obviously due to COVID. Stephen A., tell me this. What does Kyrie need to prove in this series?
That he's focused and not distracted. That's all. We know what a superstar he is. We know that he's box office, even though, Max, I don't know if you've seen the reports, but actually the New York Knicks sold out in 20 minutes for their playoff game. Meanwhile, the Brooklyn Nets evidently need James Harden to help sell playoff tickets. I mean, I just want to point that out.
The topic would be peace in the Middle East, and Stephen A. would talk about actually the Knicks.
Orange and blue skies, baby. Orange and blue skies. That's all I'm trying to say. But anyway, let me get back to Kyrie. He's got to be focused. There's nothing about his game to talk about here. Playoff basketball, last time we did see him in the playoffs, he averaged 20 against Milwaukee, got taken out in 5 shots, just 35% from the field and just 21% from three-point range. I don't anticipate that that's going to happen this time around, not when you got Kevin Durant and James Harden as your teammates. We all know that, for all intents and purposes, this brother's box office. I think he's probably the greatest show in the NBA this side of Steph Curry. Kyrie is just that spectacular. And playing with Kevin Durant and with James Harden, we know how lethal they are. We know they should be the favorites to win it all. We know they are the favorites in most people's mind to win it all. So what could potentially get in the way? What could potentially get in the way are distractions, meaning you really don't care about basketball. There's too much going on in the world, and that's where your mind is, and you're really not that interested in playing, et cetera, et cetera. That kind of thing is the only thing that can happen. I don't believe that will happen come postseason time because it is the postseason. And Kyrie understands that he's here for a reason, and he and KD got to win the chip. Got to win the chip. It's a chip or bust. Everybody knows that. So he knows that, and as a result of that, I think that he will show up and what have you. But again, in terms of answering the question as to what he has to prove, he just has to prove that he can stay focused on the issue at hand, which is basketball, okay? He needs to be focused on that for the next 2 months so they can win the chip.
Well, I mean, you keep bringing up KD and Kyrie. They got to win the chip. To me, the key there is actually Harden and D'Antoni, but we can talk and debate about that all through the playoffs, I'm sure. What does Kyrie have to prove here? Stephen A., the fact is Kyrie's a baller when he needs to be. The fact is, or at least there's a good chance he might lead the team in scoring through these playoffs, even with KD on the team. We don't know. Let's see how this all pans out. But I do think he has some stuff to show here, and that is maybe not primarily to the fans in Boston, but to people who saw him join a Celtics team and sort of destroy the chemistry. And you can say whatever you want. Kyrie joined a team that performed a little bit worse with him on the court than with him off, which is insane. How do you add Kyrie to any team and it doesn't get better? That's insane. Might be the most skillful player who ever lived. Same thing happened in Brooklyn, by the way. Until Harden showed up. It was KD and Kyrie and Harden out of control. But you know what happened in the last series, Stephen A., who people forget about is Kemba Walker. Kemba Walker is the closest approximation to Kyrie Irving in the NBA. Similar games. He's just like a smaller, not quite as good Kyrie Irving. People forget that because Kemba's been hurt. At least the first half of the season, he wasn't Kemba Walker. But I saw Kemba Walker again very recently, and he outplayed Russell Westbrook. And he's the guy where people are like, yeah, he can kind of do what Kyrie does, but instead of being a guy who might erode your chemistry, he's a guy who's going to, build up the chemistry. He's a good locker room guy. He's going to be a leader, right? And Kyrie, if he has anything to prove in this series, to me, it's no. Kemba Walker's one level, I'm another. Kemba does not replace me. For example, Kemba can't outplay him. You mentioned Kyrie being a distraction. Right, that can't happen. He, especially against the Celtics, especially with fans in Boston, Kyrie can't show up and be any kind of problem or show that, yeah, the guy who replaced me, the version of me who's not quite as good, but in important ways better, that can't happen. He's got to be better than Kemba. If he's got anything to prove, maybe that's it.
Okay, let's bring in a guy who played for the Nets and who calls their game. My guy, Richard Jefferson. It's been a minute. Good to see you. So I'm going to ask you the same question. What does Kyrie Irving need to prove? Stephen A. said he can't be a distraction. Max says he's got to be better than Kemba Walker.
He's got absolutely nothing to prove, right? Now, understand this. Kyrie's role with this Brooklyn Nets team is very similar to his role with the Cleveland Cavs. You have the ultimate playmaker. Once it was LeBron James. Now you have James Harden. When James Harden came over, there was so much conversation about it. Well, is who's going to be the point guard? Is there not? Kyrie was like, hey, this is your ball. You are the point guard. I'm going to be the scorer. That's what he was with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Like the second year we went to the NBA Finals, their third time going to the finals, he led the team in shot attempts. That's where he feels most comfortable. But he also wanted to prove that he could run a team, that he could be a point guard. And that's what the Boston situation was. I think after experiencing that in Boston, he decided, one, he wanted to pair up with, he picked his team. It was Kevin Durant. It was DeAndre Jordan. They picked their location. This is where they wanted to build something. So then what does he do? They bring in James Harden. So then he was like, look, I feel most comfortable. I've had the most success as an individual player when I just go out there and score. And I don't worry about getting other people involved. I go and be aggressive. Now, listen, don't start shaking your head. He goes and gives you a 50, 40, 90. Now, when we talk about what Kyrie has to prove, he's already won a championship. He's already been a part of playoff runs. There is nothing that he's going to accomplish in this role that he hadn't accomplished already in Cleveland. What is he going to hit a game-winning shot? The only thing that Kyrie has to do is win a championship because you picked your team, you brought them together at your location. The only thing that you have to do is win a championship, and you've already done that.
Well, first of all, you're pretty slick because I was getting ready to jump all over you and say you're too brilliant of a basketball mind. You've accomplished too much in this game. You've been connected to this game for far too long, and you're far too knowledgeable to make that insane, to give that insane take you just gave. But you covered yourself because you closed out with the point. That's exactly what I was going to make.
Don't bury the lead.
Hold on, listen. They're all in Brooklyn because of Kyrie Irving, not Madison Square Garden. They're in Brooklyn because that's where Kyrie wanted to be. A lot of people don't realize this. KD went to Brooklyn because that's where Kyrie wanted to go. You understand what I'm saying? Kyrie essentially followed Kyrie to Brooklyn, even though KD's the man, and he's the reason why Brooklyn would do everything. Because Brooklyn didn't necessarily care to have Kyrie. It's that KD wanted to come to Brooklyn, but he wasn't going to do it without Kyrie, and Kyrie wanted to go there. That's really the story, but that's a different story for another day. At the end of the day, let's pay attention. They were already a champion, meaning Kyrie Irving, with LeBron in Cleveland when Kyrie wanted to leave because he wanted it for himself. He didn't want to be the little brother, or as I quoted somebody in Kyrie's campus saying, he didn't want to be sunned by LeBron. He wasn't trying to be LeBron's son or whatever. He's trying to be his old man. Then he goes to Boston, and Max pointed out how they looked worse with him than better. Injured the first year prior to the postseason. Second year gets on the court, gets taken out in 5 games, even though the year before they had gone to the Eastern Conference Finals. Game 7 of an Eastern Conference Finals. And then ultimately, he comes there. They get taken out in 5 by Milwaukee. He shoots 21% from three-point range, 35% from the field, which is not Kyrie Irving. So then you come to Brooklyn. Last year, you only played 20 games because KD's out. People are looking for you to be the showstopper, but you end up getting injured again. And now here we go. You in Brooklyn this year. You got Harden. You got KD. Don't tell me there's nothing to prove in terms of, not as an individual player, nothing on the court per se in terms of his performance. But what you can't be is any kind of distraction that people can look at and say, if they don't win the chip, that's part of the reason why. That cannot happen with him. If that happens with him, it's a disaster. It's a disaster.
Not that, Richard.
Well, no. Well, no. My only thing is this: you said, "What does he have to prove?" Right? He doesn't. I don't think he necessarily has
to
to
stay
prove
focused.
that. No. But yeah, stay focused. But what does he have to prove? In my opinion, on the court, and this is where we all agree, individually, his talent. My only thing is this: he's already proven what he can do in the postseason. He's already proven the numbers that he can do. The one thing that Kyrie has to prove is that he can bring a team together like he did and win a championship.
Has
That's
he
the
proven
last
that he
thing.
could be a distraction?
Well, one of the problems that he's facing is the Brooklyn Nets have such overwhelming firepower. They're supposed to
might not
win.
matter.
So that's why. If he has nothing to prove, that's why. But to Stephen A's point, Richard, there is downside. It's almost like there's no upside, but there is downside. Don't be a problem. Don't be a reason the team implodes. Don't let Kemba Walker, even if the Celtics lose, but they give a spirited effort, they play together. Kemba plays just as well as Kyrie. Yeah. Stuff like that. There's limited upside because it's the first round. You're overwhelming favorites. And Richard, I agree with you. To me, the secret sauce in Brooklyn is like quiet as kept. It's James Harden and Mike D'Antoni running what they run, except now their weapons are KD, Kyrie, and Joe Harris. Good luck. Good freaking luck.
Time out, Max. Time out, Max. You know why, Richard, you know why I always dismiss Max when he says that? Stay with me, Max, because I'm very serious about this. I'm not saying that you're wrong about D'Antoni with Harden, but what if another coach had a different system, but I still had KD, Kyrie, and James Harden? Wouldn't that work too? If Scott Brooks was coaching those three,
maybe not like this.
If Scott Brooks was coaching those three instead of Westbrook and Bradley Beal and some young talent in the nation's capital, would there be a difference? If Tom Thibodeau was coaching this team instead of the Knicks, would there be a difference? I mean, if Greg Popovich had them instead of what he has in San Antonio right now, would there be? Stop acting like Mike D'Antoni with Harden.
No, but what I'm saying is
Harden, KD, and Kyrie.
Wait,
it don't
Richard,
matter
let me. I understand your point, Stephen A. Let me be very clear about what I'm saying, why I like them, even though they've been hurt. They've only played 8 games together and everything else. I look at the Golden State Warriors with KD, the team that LeBron basically raised the white flag before the series started. Who can ever beat them? Went to a 7th game against Houston, that Houston didn't even have Chris Paul, missed every 3 they took basically, and still only lost by single digits. My point is this. D'Antoni's system, run by Harden, takes a far inferior team and almost beats the best team ever. Now it's D'Antoni's system run by Harden, but with the Warriors' talent. Forget it. It's over. And it doesn't have to do primarily with KD.